Good afternoon, everybody, and thanks for tuning in. John Kelly, profiler here, and welcome. Welcome to our series today, which is a little different. It's called Killing Caregivers. This is about caregivers that went off to college and got a lot of education on how to save lives. But instead, when they came out of college, went to work in a hospital, they decided to take lives and became serial killers. So, try and figure that one out. And by far, they have the highest body count of all serial killers. You know, the first serial killer I want to talk about is Dr. Harold Shipman. Harold Shipman was an MD over in England. He's what we would call a comfort serial killer. You've heard me talk about this before. He killed women, mostly women, about 80% women, some men too, but he killed his victims primarily for money. Creature comforts, that's where we get comfort serial killer from. He was found guilty on 15 patient murders. However, the real count is somewhere between 218, 250 to 300. He had a lot of victims over in England. He could be the worst ever, we'll see, time will tell. 80%, as I said, were women. His murder weapon of choice was heroin. He liked to give you some opium, some heroin, get you strung out, and then he overdosed you. Or he overdosed you right away, whatever served him the best purpose. He was also a big-time forger. Okay, he just happened to be in a lot of his victims' wills, so he forged a lot of wills as well. So he went off for life to prison. Unfortunately, you know, these guys they can't stand losing power of control. And certainly when they're locked away in a cage, they don't have very much power and control. So he decided to commit suicide and kill himself. So goodbye to Harold Shipman. The other serial killer I want to talk about is a power control serial killer. And that would be Nurse Charles Cullen from New Jersey. Yes, yours truly did have some involvement in the Cullen case. I did a lot of consulting after the fact. After the initial investigation, I was not involved in the initial investigation, nor the arrest, nor the conviction of Nurse Charles Cullen. So I want to put that out there. However, I've had many conversations with one of my best friends and colleagues, Detective Tim Braun, who was one of the arresting detectives in the case. Nurse Charles Cullen was arrested by Detective Tim Braun and Detective Danny Baldwin. And it was done in such a very smart way, because even though Nurse Cullen had killed many people and eventually admitted to 40, but we're thinking more like 300 or 400 for all the years that he worked for all the different hospitals in New Jersey, there was no evidence. When Detective Braun and Detective Baldwin went in, there was no DNA, there was no fingerprints, there was no video. There really wasn't much of anything to grab Nurse Charles Cullen on. However, it came down to, can we get an admission? Can we get him to admit that he killed these people? Not an easy thing to do. Pretty hard task. Bottom line was, these guys pulled the wool over Mr. Charles Cullen's eyes. They ambushed him in such a professional manner and got the admission that they needed. It was just incredible the way they did it. They set Charles Cullen up without any physical evidence. And they said to him, we know you killed these people. Now, Charlie, we can paint it one of two ways. Either you killed them because you don't want to see them suffer and you're an angel of mercy. Or, Charlie, you killed them for your own entertainment and you wanted to see them suffer, and you're a very sadistic nurse and sadistic serial killer. How do you want us to paint it, Charlie? You tell us. And Nurse Charles Cullen turned around and said, listen, I wanted to help them. I wanted to put them out of their pain. I wanted to put them out of their misery. So that's why you killed them, Charlie? Yes, that's why I killed them. Okay, sign the statement. Fill it out. and Charles Cullen admitted to killing these people. In the initial court hearing, he admitted to 40 murders. I'm watching this on TV. I said to myself, why 40? Why's 40 the magic number? Well, back in the day, that was the ratio per serial killer. Some serial killers killed 20, some killed 30, some killed 10, some killed 100, some killed 60, some killed 70, some killed 80. We boil them all together. Per ratio would average down to 40 victims per serial killer nationwide. So he read that somewhere and he came up with that 40 number. However, like I said, we believe it's more than 300 or 400 victims. We believe he's got a lot of victims out there. So anyway, that was the end of Charles Cullen. And he was taken off the street, so we don't have any serial killer nurses in New Jersey now that I know of. But I'll tell you, the sad part to this whole story is that he was killing for years. He was passed from one hospital to another, from Pennsylvania all through New Jersey. I mean, we've got a lot of victims out there. We've got a lot of families suffering out there because these hospitals continued to pass him on. They knew he was killing. They were pretty sure he murdered a number of people, but they would not bring it out to the media because they didn't want to say they had a serial killing nurse on staff and they didn't want to be sued. So the best thing to do is just tell him he's fired. Don't give him a bad reference. Just not say anything and pass him along and let him go find a new hospital and new killing grounds. And that's what these hospitals did. And these two detectives, these two great detectives, brought this all out. And it's out there in a book, a #1 bestseller called The Good Nurse. And the movie's going to be out soon. I don't know exactly how long, but it's being made. It's called The Good Nurse, and it's about Nurse Charles Cullen, serial killing nurse from New Jersey. Last serial killer I want to talk about is sexual power serial killer. That's Richard Rodgers, Nurse Richard Rodgers from Staten Island Hospital. You may have heard of him. He was called the Last Call Killer. He was grabbing gay men in high-end Manhattan bars back in the early 90s. They got him on 2 murders, and they're looking at him for 4. They're looking at him for 2 others, but I got to believe there's a lot more than that, because you don't start that late in life. I believe this guy was killing for a while and had a different body disposal technique, or the way he was disposing of the bodies didn't get caught up with until years later. If any of you out there remember Last Call Killer, Nurse Richard Rodgers, what he would do is he would stalk gay men in high-end Manhattan bars and lure them to his apartment. Once he get them to his apartment, he would give them a knockout drug or a date rape drug, whatever you want to call it, in their drink. Him being a nurse, he had access to a very powerful minor tranquilizer called Versed. It's used in local operations. He would knock them out, do what he wanted to do with them, strangle them, haul them into his bathroom, throw them in the bathtub, chop them up, put them in garbage bags, dismember them, put their body parts in garbage bags, and then he would haul them away down the turnpike and down the highways and byways of the metro area and throw them in trash cans. When they were finally being detected, you had body parts in Pennsylvania, you had body parts in New Jersey, you had body parts in Connecticut, you had body parts in New York. A head here, an arm there, a leg there, torso over here. I mean, this guy just, dismembered them and then just, littered the highways and road stops along the interstates all through the metro area. And finally, he got caught by some great detective work. They actually couldn't pick up his fingerprints or any clues on the garbage bags that he left in New Jersey or New York, the metro area, but they were able to pick it up in Canada. Not that he dropped any of his victims off in Canada, but a real sharp detective took the garbage bags to Canada to have Canada perform fingerprint testing. And Canada does a different type of fingerprint testing. They do what's called a gold testing for fingerprints in Canada. Whereas in the United States, they didn't come up with any fingerprints. Up in Canada, they came up with some definite fingerprints that were Nurse Richard Rodgers, and they were connected. They were able to connect him to those fingerprints. And then he was eventually arrested. He's doing a couple life sentences in New York and New Jersey on 2 victims. Nothing on the other 2 victims that they're pretty much sure he killed. But I believe there's a lot more bodies out there connected to Nurse Richard Rodgers. Thank you so much for watching today. Really appreciate your viewing, your support, your participation. Thanks again for all your subscriptions. Have a great weekend and stay safe out there.